Adam Hardberg, an American police officer, found a newborn in a garbage can and saved his life. 25 years later, when he was no longer a police officer, he received an unexpected phone call that changed his life forever. Adam Hardberg was born and raised in Oregon. He was always an open-hearted person and very determined with the things he set out to do. As a teenager, he was a very curious and active boy. Although he lived in a large city like Portland, he was always hiking in the parks and woods in the area. He had an immense bravery to go deep into the woods until he found rivers and waterfalls, but Adam was terrified of coming across a bear in his path. When he finished high school, his parents said that Adam should choose a career to pursue. He didn't have many doubts. "I wanted to be a policeman." He was never a boy who liked guns or dreamed of taking part in a gunfight against bandits. Adam was more interested in protecting the community and people, how he could make a difference without hurting anyone. But he was aware that if he was a police officer, he would also have to participate in direct action against people with bad intentions. Still, Adam didn't abandon his ideals. He learned to shoot and identify the different types of drugs, read a lot about the legislation, and tried to approach people in the most correct way possible. The young policeman did all the rigorous training of the academy, as the booklet said. What he didn't know is that life was about to put his vocation to help people to the test, and in a very serious and extreme way. Years passed and Adam Hardberg continued on the streets of Portland. He made routine rounds, participated in investigations linked to the sale of narcotics, and occasionally chased thieves through the neighborhoods. But the day that changed everything for the policeman started like any other. He left the police force building in his car. He drove through some neighborhoods in Portland very slowly, noticing everything that was moving that morning. Suddenly, as he entered a residential area on the fringes of the city, the officer heard a very unusual noise that caught his attention. At that time of day, there weren't many people on the street in the neighborhood. Most of the residents had already left for work. In a state of alert, he decided to follow the sound. It grew louder and clearer as it got closer. Adam decided to get out of the car to look for the source of that noise more calmly and precisely. He wasn't sure what was going on, but it looked like something worth investigating. He followed the noise to a street corner that was well known and dangerous for drug trafficking and crimes caused by rival gangs. And it was precisely this heavy history of the region that worried the officer. As he walked through the neighborhood, he kept his hand close to his holster, praying he didn't have to draw his gun. Adam was tense. "I thought anything could happen at any time." As he rounded the corner, he saw a group of people who looked very distressed. Did you like this story? Check out many other real and exciting stories on our channel. See you later. When they saw Adam, they ran towards him, all talking at the same time. The policeman asked them to explain what was happening. One of the women who was with the group, already with tears in her eyes, pointed to the dumpster a few meters away from them all. Adam started towards her, already imagining it was a drug shipment, but when he got closer, the sound he'd been hearing earlier came back. At first he thought it was a cat, but now, so close to its source, he was sure the situation was more serious than he had imagined. There were the sounds of a baby, which was deposited there in a trash can, next to several garbage bags and blowflies. Adam was shocked. It was the first time he had come across a child in that state, and he began to wonder why those people hadn't taken the baby away. The child was extremely weak, but he still had the strength to cry, which was a very important sign. Adam still had a chance to save the boy. The policeman couldn't believe what he saw and could only think of how cruel someone had been to abandon a little creature like that in such a degrading situation. Throughout his career, Adam had already dealt with real stories of people leaving babies at fire stations, giving them up for adoption, and even to orphanages, but in dumpsters it was the first time. Then the policeman took a deep breath, organized his thoughts, and began to act. As the boy cried, the policeman removed the garbage that was on top of his little body and, very carefully, pulled the baby out of the trash, putting the child in his arms. Despite still showing clear vital signs, Adam sensed that something was off, as the boy seemed to be breathing slower than usual. He thought it might be normal in that scenario. After all, the little boy had been for who knows how long partially suffocated under the garbage. With no time to waste, he called 911 and didn't let go of the baby for a minute, keeping him warm and tight in his arms. Within minutes the ambulance arrived, and even though there were nurses and paramedics on the rescue team, Adam didn't think he could leave the helpless child alone again. He looked at the boy in his arms, who seemed calmer now. So he did what his heart told him. He climbed into the ambulance with the rescue team and went with them to the hospital, without taking his attention off the child at any time. On the way, Adam realized that he could no longer handle the baby without giving him a name. He deserved to be identified as an individual. Then he began to call him Gabriel, like the angel. Adam wasn't exactly a religious man, but he thought the name suited the little one's purity and sweetness perfectly. At the hospital, the doctor did several tests to make sure the child was okay. What Adam feared most was that Gabriel had contracted some illness from spending so much time in the garbage. Fortunately, despite everything, no signs of illness or serious symptoms were found. The doctor just drew attention to a redness on the boy's back, which could be an allergic reaction. It was very difficult for the officer to have to leave Gabriel alone in the hospital while he returned to his home and family, but as long as the boy was under medical supervision, Adam made a point of visiting him every day. Little by little, Gabriel gained strength and regained his health. The city's social workers took care of the boy's case, and before long he was chosen for adoption by the young couple Mary and James Wood. They lived in the town of Eugene, south of Portland, and fell in love with the boy as soon as they met him. And of course they were also touched by the story of his abandonment. During the adoption process, the couple learned that Adam Hardberg had been the police officer responsible for finding him and that he started calling the boy Gabriel. Mary and James liked the name and decided to keep it, which made Adam very happy. While he was relieved that the little one found a home so quickly, he was sad that he couldn't see him every day anymore. In the hospital, visiting him made Adam feel connected to Gabriel and also a little responsible for him. Gabriel grew up in a home filled with love and care. Mary and James, his parents, never hid from the boy that he had been abandoned and then adopted. He didn't become an angry person because of this rejection or traumatized, but he always found himself thinking about what could have happened to have him dumped in a dump on the outskirts of a big city. That was a thought that bothered him, and, as much as he imagined different situations, it would never be enough to satisfy his curiosity. Mary and James knew that question might never be answered, but they wanted to comfort their son's heart and mind in some way. For this, one day they contacted the Portland police and asked for Adam. Then they learned that the officer was no longer with that corporation, but had become a ranger of Oregon State Parks. Adam had requested a transfer some time after the incident with Gabriel. In a way, the encounter with that baby had awakened in him the desire to work with a type of policing that had more to do with his lifestyle. The couple remembered all the officer's concern and how he had gone above and beyond his duty to ensure Gabriel's protection and recovery. At their insistence, they got the contact of Captain Phillips, who was now retired but knew the whereabouts of his ex-cop. I think Adam was more of a social worker than a police officer. But now at least he's among the beasts in the woods. He must be happier helping tourists and adventurers away from the dirty world of crime, was what he told Mary and James before passing on the contact of Adam's new division. Over the phone, they learned that Adam never forgot what happened that day and that he often found himself wondering what would have happened to the boy after his adoption. So they set up a meeting at Adam's cabin, next to a national park. It would be a great reunion. Gabriel was overjoyed to finally be able to meet the person who pulled him out of the trash, but also nervous. He wanted to understand why the cop had cared so much about him. And finally the meeting took place. Adam was so thrilled to see Gabriel grown up and healthy, so different from when he rescued him. He explained to the teenager that he never had children, and the closest he came to feeling like a father was when he took Gabriel in his arms for the first time. I know it sounds silly, but at that moment something changed. I felt some of what a father must feel when he sees his child in danger, he said. Gabriel then gave Adam a hug and said he needed to thank him personally. The boy took advantage of the moment and said he wanted to meet his biological mother so he could personally forgive her as well, and wanted to know if Adam Hardberg knew anything about his past that would help him locate the woman. At that moment, Adam's smile disappeared. Anyway, he said he had tried to investigate who his mother might be. She wanted to search the Portland maternity wards for the names of all the women who had given birth in the 2 or 3 months before Gabriel's abandonment, but who had been barred from her efforts by Captain Phillips. The captain said if I wanted to fix the world, I should go after real bad guys. Because of sarcasm of this kind, I left the corporation. It's been so long now that I don't even know if it's possible to trace it, added Adam. The boy felt sorry for that information. So he wouldn't be able to find his mother and understand what had happened 16 years ago. At the end of the meeting, before the boy and his parents left, the young man and the ex-cop exchanged contacts and decided to meet whenever possible. Gabriel just didn't expect the unbelievable news he would receive from Adam a short time later. It turns out that Adam realized how important it was for Gabriel to meet his mother and took a week's leave of absence from his role to pick up where he left off 16 years ago. He knew it would be difficult, but he wouldn't start from scratch, as a lot of information he had stored in an old file. Adam began by calling every maternity hospital in Portland and asking for birth files from that era. Not all hospitals had properly organized files at that time, so he would have to make do with what they sent him, in addition to having to rely on luck. Fortunately, the files they sent had quite complete information on each patient, and he was able to discard the files of women who gave birth accompanied by their husbands and partners. Adam spent 2 full days sorting chips and another day making phone calls. It was already 9 o'clock on a Thursday night when he learned of a woman named Lillian Heatfield, who had given birth nearly 2 months before Adam found the baby in the dumpster. Of all the chips that have stood the test of time, this one seemed like the best bet. That same night he called Mary and James Wood. He said the woman lived somewhere on the outskirts of Cottage Grove, maybe in the middle of some woods, and they would have to go there to talk to her, as there was no phone record in her name. Mary and James were amazed at the information, as Cottage Grove was just a few miles from where they lived. If true, it was possible that Gabriel had practically grown up next to his birth mother, without knowing her and having no idea that she was closer than he could have imagined. The next day, Adam drove up to Eugene in his truck and picked up young Gabriel. From there, they drove along dirt roads and crossed streams until they found a small village of huts occupied by workers in the region's lumber industry. With a few questions for the people who lived there, they identified Lillian Heatfield's house. When they knocked on the door, a woman under 40 years old answered them, with a cigarette in her hand. She looked suspicious and got a good look at Gabriel. Adam Hardberg introduced himself as a park ranger and former Portland police officer, and wanted to know if the woman had lived in the city about 16 years ago. The woman said yes, but that she hoped one day she could forget the city and everything that had lived in it. Adam asked if she could tell him what had happened, and the woman confessed that she had been a horrible person and that if today she was nothing more than a poor widow, it was because she had deserved that fate. I cursed myself, sir. I'm sure of it. God didn't wait for me to die to punish me. I married a bad man, did bad things, and now I live in this end of the world alone with my guilt, Lillian said. Did one of those things you've done in the past involve a baby? Adam asked, trying to sound as friendly as possible. Lillian's eyes filled with tears widened and she knelt down. She began to cry and say that her time had finally come. You came to arrest me, cop? I told him that we were going to pay for what he did. I told him, Lillian said, in an increasingly anguished tone. Adam told her she needed to calm down and asked what the we pay story was. Who was us, anyway? Lillian explained that she had married at age 18 to Jeremy Heatfield, a boy who had become a totally different person since he started working cutting wood in the forests for the industry. When Jeremy discovered that Lillian was pregnant, he not only expressed unhappiness, he had suspected that the child was not his. The entire gestation period had been a real hell, and Lillian suffered several threats daily. Jeremy said he would either leave or he wouldn't let her out of the house. He insistently asked her to have an abortion, as he would not risk raising another man's child. Lillian was afraid of threats, but she thought that when the child was born, Jeremy would see how the boy would look like him, and then his attitudes would change. Maybe they would even go back to being a couple in love like before their wedding. But that's not what happened. The boy was born, and Jeremy even forbade her to register the boy with his last name. Lillian said the man became totally paranoid and decided to steal from him one night while she and the baby were sleeping. When the man returned home without the child, Lillian became desperate and ran to call the police, but the man threatened her with a knife and said that it was too late for her to worry about that baby, and that he had done what he wanted. She didn't have the heart to do it when he demanded an abortion, and that now they should get out of town as quickly as possible. 1 year later, Jeremy died in an accident at work in the lumber, which relieved the woman of a life under constant threats, but the fact is that she has never forgiven herself for not being able to protect her son. He developed a deep depression and to this day thinks about how his son would have been if he had survived. 1 year after moving in, "This all I live for is a curse, sir. A curse for the crime I let happen to a helpless child. And now you are here to arrest me," she said. At this point in the story, not only she, but Gabriel was crying too. Adam then took her by the shoulders and said, "No one is going to arrest you, Lillian. Now take a deep breath and pay attention to what I'm going to say, because no one is here for fun. I found your boy 16 years ago and he's here to meet you." Lillian lifted her head and watched Gabriel once more. She didn't know what to do or what to think. She was in shock. Anyway, the two embraced after 16 years. The last time they did, Gabriel was just a newborn. "I survived, Mother. I survived," said the young man. At the end of that day, Adam Hardberg felt complete like never before in his life. The most difficult situation of her life had led to an investigation that was now complete. Not only had he found Gabriel again, but now the young man had understood his own story much better. For a boy who had nothing but garbage bags around him when he was found, he now had 2 moms, a dad, and a friend who would do anything for him. Did you like this story? Check out many other real and exciting stories on our channel.